Hey guys, I am back here with a question. This is something that I've wanted to ask for a while, just based on, seeing people's thoughts on things, reading people's thoughts on things, seeing these opinions float about. I just got more and more of a desire to ask this question, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it now. Does a match need to be long for it to be epic? I'm going to ask this question, and I know we're going to delve into matters of taste again with some of the others on YouTube, but so maybe nothing will really get accomplished here, but let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. I don't think there's any harm in doing that. And before I do get started, I will point out that I'm probably going to make, before this is over, I'm probably going to make some assumptions about people's tastes as we go along. I could turn out to be inaccurate, mistaken. If that's the case, let me know. I'm not trying to jump to conclusions about people. I'm just hypothesizing, I guess you should say. But there is definitely this mindset about how long a match should go. A match that was promoted and positioned as one of the main matches on any show needs to go a minimum amount of time, or else it's considered to be a disappointment. And I'm going to ask why that is. I mean, for me, one of the most gratifying things since I started watching ProRes and got into the stylistic differences has been that you don't feel an obligation to wait for things to get going in a match. You don't have to think to yourself, okay, they're not going to do much to begin with, but that's okay as long as they get going later, For me, the matches that I like to watch these days don't kill any time. It could still start off slow, at a slower pace than what they're eventually going to work towards, but as long as they establish something right away, and ideally carry it through to the end of the match, that's all well and good for me. And oftentimes, those narratives, or as the case may be, lack of narratives, just don't need a lot of time to get to the point. And the reason I say lack of narratives is, to me, if you're going to do a match that doesn't employ a lot of storytelling or narrative at all, then it shouldn't be going long. I mean, my second favorite WWE match this year is the first Orton Christian match on SmackDown, the favorite being Miz and Morrison on Raw. Orton and Christian don't really go out there to tell a story in that match. People can say that Christian's selling is excellent, which it definitely is, but there aren't really many meaningful control segments in that match to make the selling stand out that much. The charm of that match to me is the quality of the transitions and the quality of the spots, and it worked this time because the match just went the right length. It meant that there was no repetition, there was no time killing, and there was no point where you thought to yourself, well, should he really have kicked out of that? I mean, people are iffy on the Super Juniors tournament because of the length of the matches, and I haven't watched any of that tournament yet, but for me, if that tournament turns out to be full of matches like the first Orton Christian match, I'll be very happy about that, Whereas a match like Suzuki versus Edwards from Noah this year was just too much time killing. I made the point when I watched that match, when I talked about that match, that Edwards was very good in that match, and he was good enough to the point where they could have had a really, really good 15-minute match, 20-minute match. It was the time that hurt that match more than anything else. Whereas Suzuki versus Nakajima, they just did a much better job of keeping focus during that match, even though it went the same length of time. Now, making that point, could you say as a result that it is more impressive when wrestlers keep focus for a long match than if they do that for a short match? Of course you can say that. That's one of the reasons why All Japan in the 1990s was so impressive, because they had these 40-minute matches and they never lost focus at any point. And I would say that you could very well make the argument that those matches, they don't feel like sport fights. They feel more like there's a stronger grand theatre opera atmosphere in those matches that comes through a lot stronger than any kind of sporting atmosphere. I'm working on the but at the same time, over at New Japan, you had a stronger sporting atmosphere and shorter matches as a result. I mean, I'm working on the Hashimoto Shinya list now that people commented that they wanted on the Takayama video, and one match that I can guarantee is going to get in the top 3 on that list is Hashimoto versus Takara Nobuhiko for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship in the Dome in April 1996. That match is 12 minutes long, but what they did took us to a finish that worked. It was decisive, it was satisfying, and they didn't need any longer to tell their story. With Takayama list, the match with Nagata that topped that list with a 5-star rating, it's 15 minutes long. It's the same thing. They didn't need any longer to tell their story. Now, like I thought would happen, we've gone into matters of taste here, but one thought that I will leave you with here is, for the Ring of Honor matches, for the athletic demonstrations, if they're going to go 20 plus minutes, then I think there should at the very least be a clear sense of progression in the spots they're doing, in terms of how impressive the spots are. And one of the things I really just didn't understand about that Eddie Edwards Roderick Strong match, the one with the title change, I watched that match because I was interested to see how the title change played out. One of the things I really just didn't understand about that match was there just didn't seem to be any sense of progression at all. I think the spots of that match pretty much stayed at the same level throughout the whole thing. I mean, I might not like Davey versus Roderick, but I can at least see the sense of progression they had in that match to that extent, in their matches to that extent. Even though I still think there's a lot of time killing in those matches. But with Edwards versus Strong, I just didn't see it, and that's one of the things that really kind of confuses me about the praise that match gets. But there's my question anyway. That's kind of off topic, but here's my question: why do the big matches need to be long, or else they're considered to be disappointing? Respond if you like. I will keep working on the Hashimoto Top 10, and a few days ago I made a huge Chikara order on SmartMark Video, so I'll be doing a catch-up video on them at some point, and I will talk to you guys later.